In this video, we're going to create code in Excel VBA that combines multiple workbooks that contain multiple sheets into one master workbook. So you can see here I have a folder containing 3 Excel files for orders for each of these 3 different branch locations. Each of these files has 2 sheets just containing orders for that particular branch. And what we want to do is add a new workbook with our code and combine all of the workbooks and worksheets into one master file. So the first thing we want to do is get into the VBA editor window. You can do that by hitting Alt F11 anywhere in this project window. I'm going to right click, go to Insert, and then Module. We'll call this subroutine Merge Files. And we'll begin by declaring some variables. The first one's going to be called WB for workbook. It's going to be as the data type workbook, and it's just going to represent each workbook in our folder, the collection of workbooks in that folder. So we're going to have a variable called WS. It's going to be as the data type worksheet, and that's just going to represent each of the sheets on each of our workbooks in that folder. We're going to have a variable called new workbook, so we'll just call this NWB. It represents the new workbook that we add, and then it will hold our combined workbooks. So in that new workbook, we'll have a variable called new worksheet, and that just represents each of the sheets that we copy to this new workbook from our collection of workbooks and worksheets up here. We're going to have a variable called path, which is going to be as the data type string, and that just represents the path where our files are located that we want to combine into one. We're going to have a variable called file name, which is also going to be as the data type string, and that just represents a variable that holds the temporary file name of each file as we loop through all of the files in our folder. So one thing we want to do starting out is input this line of code here for application screen updating, and we want to set this to false. This just disables screen updating, and this will make our code run faster as we perform our loops. So at the bottom, we'll set this back to true. So at the end of the code, we'll set this back to a value of true. And now what we want to do is set our new workbook, which is going to be the workbook that holds our combined files. So that is going to be equal to workbooks and add. Our path variable is going to be equal to the path here that holds our files that we want to combine. So I'm going to copy this path here, and this is a string, so it needs to be enclosed in double quotes. And very important, we need to add a slash onto the end of this and end it with a double quote, because we're going to combine this, join this with our file name variable, so we need to have a slash here. That's very important. So now our file name variable is going to be equal to the directory function, and we input a full path here for that. So it's going to be equal to our path variable, and then what we want here is a wildcard, and then the file extension XLSX to do a wildcard search on anything with this file extension, because our workbooks are this type of extension. And what this will return is the file name of the first file that is found in our path with that extension, which is going to be branch number 1. So later in our code, I'll show you how we increment this to the next file. So now what we want to do is perform a while loop, and we want this loop to run through our folder containing our files so long as our file name variable is not equal to nothing. Because once our while loop has run through every single file in our folder, it will then set this value of the file name variable to nothing, and that tells us it's gone through every file containing this extension in that folder. So now what I want to do is set our workbook variable, and that is going to be equal to workbooks and then open. And what we want to open is the path joined to our file name variable. So we have our path variable, file name variable, that will open the branch 1 file. And what we want to do is loop through each of the sheets in that file, that first file. So we're going to use a for each loop and refer to the worksheet in our collection of worksheets in our workbook variable. So for each worksheet in our collection of workbook worksheets, we want to reference that sheet and then use the copy method and then designate where we want that copied to. We want it to be copied after the last sheet in our new workbook variable. So starting out, when that new workbook gets added, there's going to be one sheet there. That's just the default sheet that will be a blank sheet. And what we want here is to get the index number of that sheet and add after that. So we're going to refer to our new workbook variable worksheets, and then we're going to copy this again because we want to get the index number, and to do that we're going to reference our new workbook again, worksheets as a collection, and count. So that will get a count of 1 there. This first worksheet will get added after that in our new workbook. So then we want to move to the next worksheet in our collection of sheets in that workbook. And then from there, what we want to do at this point, we'll be done with that first workbook once we've looped through each of the sheets in that workbook. So we want to reference that workbook and close it, and then we want to set our file name, we want to increment it to the next file. So we're going to set this equal to the directory function without any arguments. This will increment our file name variable to the next file name in our folder. Once we have done that, we want to end our while loop. So we're going to reference our while loop and end. And then the only other thing I want to do here is rename all of our sheets that get added to this new workbook with a count of 1 to 6. So what we're going to do here is add another for each loop and reference our new worksheets variable that we declared up here in our new workbook collection of worksheets. And we're going to set that new worksheet name equal to the new worksheet index number. So that will set it to wherever the sheet is located in the collection of sheets, just its index. And we don't want to count that first blank sheet that is already there. So what we want to do is set this equal to the index number minus 1, which will make that first sheet a value of 0, and then the first sheet that we copy from our original workbook, sheet 1, So then we want to go to the next new worksheet in our collection. So that should be everything we need there to make this run. So I'm going to hit play, and what we should see is a new workbook get added with the 6 sheets from each of our individual workbooks in the folder, with the sheet names being 1 to 6. So I'm going to hit play. This will run. It'll take a little bit just because of the video. And you can see here are sheets 1 through 6. Our first sheet, that is the default sheet, has a value of 0. And then we have 1, 2 for the first 2 sheets of branch 1. And we have 3 and 4 for the first 2 sheets of branch 2. And then 5 and 6 for the sheets in the branch 3 file. Well, that is all for now. Thanks for watching. Please remember to subscribe.